That. Good morning, Dean Kelly. How are you?
Yeah.
All right, let's make sure we got the recording going, and it is. We'll get the share started. We're going to be ready to roll here in just a moment. Okay, I think we got that up and going. What is going on with this? No, I don't want a widget in the corner. I'd like the widget gone. Thank you. I talk to my devices. It keeps me sane. Wait, maybe it doesn't work that way. Anyway, all right. So while we're waiting, Vios is coming right back. Let's just go through this week real quick, and I'll let you guys know what you have coming at you. Week 12, you have two assignments. We'll be discussing these two assignments in class today. Okay. They're not difficult assignments, but they do require you to sit and do a lot of contemplating. And at the end of the lecture, I'll go through them. We may not make it all the way through the lecture material today, but we'll finish that on Wednesday. For a week where there's really not a lot of content, I decided to take you guys on a journey because that's what this whole week is about. So, yep, that's all you have, those two assignments. So with that said, let me get the slides back to the beginning and pull them up over here. Okay. Welcome to Philosophy 4900. This is week 12, and I put the A because this is the first lecture of the week. You should be familiar with that by now. And of course, normally I use two computers because I got a class right after this, as you remember. And so I've got to be able to take this computer while it's processing the file and scoot to the other one. So anyway, the journey. This week is all about your journey, and particularly your journey here at Cleary University. Who right now in the class is a senior and going to be graduating this May? Bios, Basil?
No.
Or you bought a cow?
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
Okay. Donovan, Christian, either of you graduating this May?
No.
No, okay. Well, you guys are then juniors, so they'll be coming at you next year. It's still a good exercise for you to do. Since this is a senior level course, like I said, many of you are looking forward to graduating, or you're a junior in this course and you're looking forward to finishing up next year. When I teach leadership, I recommend that my students conduct regular self-assessments. And they can be formal, and we're going to go through a version of that, and they could be informal, where you just kind of sit down in a quiet place and you got a journal and you ask yourself the hard questions. I like to do this at least once a year, maybe twice a year, just to kind of understand where I'm at compared to a year ago or 5 years ago, or et cetera, to see how I have grown, to identify areas that I want to change. Because ultimately, the only things that I have true control over are the things that I can change. And so if I can't change things external to me, then I look internal and I can either accept what's there or I have to change it. And this is a useful endeavor to help you summarize the journey that you took to reach this very monumental place in your education. Christina, remind me, and I'll mark you off in the grade book for being here afterward. So a person's journey, it's their story. If you've learned about organizational stories in other classes, an organizational story is about the founders, how it began, how it grew, what it's gone through, the good, the bad, the pretty, the ugly, everything in there. A true organizational story doesn't hide the things that are bad in its past. It admits to them, and it shows how that organization overcame those problems. The same is true for us as individuals. It's the life that you've lived and the experiences that you have had. Now, particularly, you're looking at the last 4 years, or if you're a junior, the last 3 years of your time here at Cleary, because you're not the same person now as you were when you walked in on day one, your freshman year. Granted, you're still the same person, but you're not really, are you? You've matured, you've grown, you changed. So before you complete the assignments this week, I want you to take time to ponder the benefits that you've gained as a student here at Cleary. I also want you to contemplate the obstacles you had to overcome. Maybe the things about yourself that you still want to change. Okay. Contemplate those. Find a quiet place and contemplate them seriously and be honest with yourself. Sometimes we lie to ourselves when we do these self assessments. Don't. Be honest with yourself because you really know if you're being honest or truthful or not. So now we're going to travel back in time. Who has seen the movies Back to the Future? We're going to get in the DeLorean and we're going to crank it up to what's the gigahertz that they had to get to, a certain gigahertz or speed or what it was they had to get to. Anyway, we're going to get up to the right speed and we're going to go back to your freshman year. TCM 1000. Can you remember back that far? Let's talk about that class. When I teach TCM 1000, I teach students about the Cleary mind. Now, why am I discussing the Cleary mind right now? Because you're going to be talking about in your assignments this week how the Cleary mind really has impacted you. That's what this is about, your journey. And the Cleary mind you get from the beginning, and it's carried with you through your whole time here. And it's something that's going to be carried with you for years to come. The ethos, the codes of conduct I learned in the Navy and the Army. Decades later, I still live by them. They were ingrained into me, just like the Cleary mind hopefully has been ingrained into you. And so I'm going to take you back to that class just for a moment. This is my poor attempt at time travel. The clocks are going forward. I could not find one that was going backward. Yes, I know. There are 8 attributes that comprise the Cleary mind: critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, ethics, communication, persuasion. Now, persuasion is not the same thing as coercion. They are actually, when you break them down, they use the same processes, but the intention is completely different. You see, persuasion is positive. Coercion is negative. That's when you're manipulating somebody. But you can still use the techniques of that. But if your intention is good and your approach is good and you're being ethical, which is really the foundation of this entire class this semester, you're engaged in persuasion, not coercion. And of course, leadership and the entrepreneurial mindset. The Cleary mind was developed to offer students, you guys, an edge in the ever-changing business world that's out there today. The business environment, the climate is different today than it was 5 years ago, and it'll be different in 5 years from now. And so it's ever-changing. You've got to be able to adapt to that. So as technology changes, so too does the landscape of tomorrow's work environment, the office, the manufacturing plant, wherever you wind up working. But Cleary University wanted to give its graduates, which some of you are looking at this May, congratulations, the upper hand in the competitive job market. We talk about competitive advantage for nations and organizations and regions of the world, but you have got competitive advantage. You've got things that you can identify and say, I really specialize in this. And then you make that kind of your hallmark, your signature. Okay, that's your competitive advantage. And Cleary wanted to help you to have a stronger competitive advantage when you enter the workforce and a decade, 2 decades down the road when you're in leadership in that workforce. The Cleary mind is a mindset. It's not just 8 words that are thrown down on a paper. As we spend the rest of the term, well, we've got only a few weeks left in this class, discussing the Cleary mind, which we're not. These are slides from my TCM 1000 course. I did not necessarily rewrite them. I figured you'd catch on before long. I wanted each of you to sincerely look at to see how you can become a better student, employee, and leader of tomorrow. You see, that's what this week's assignment is about. How have you grown? What can you improve? This is for you. Yes, I'm going to be grading it, but this isn't where I can tell you, hey, you're wrong. I got no say whether you're wrong. If you don't submit something, that's when you're wrong. If you do very poor work in going through your mind and working through things, that's when you're wrong. What you put down on the page, I can't tell you if you're right or wrong because this is very personal. Critical thinking, let's start there. The objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment. In other words, you're using the facts to come up with what you believe it is. Okay. Now, at this point, we can talk about belief, we can talk about logic, we can talk about reason, we can talk about reality. The point is, you're collecting data about this drama being played out on the stage in front of you. That's reality. You're sitting in your seat in the theater. Do you get up during intermission and go talk to other people and learn their perspective? Because the actor portraying Romeo may have done something with a hand or some motion that makes a line more clear, and you didn't see it, but this other person from their vantage point did. It doesn't necessarily change your perception of reality, but you're learning vicariously at that point. So critical thinking is considering the facts and different variables impacting a situation. It leads to a person being able to think for themselves while avoiding personal bias or the biases of any particular social group. The enemies of critical thinking are any of the cognitive biases or logical fallacies. At this point, you've been introduced to a number of them in my class here, and I'm sure in other classes, so we don't have to go through too many of them, I hope. But just to give you a quick look at them, cognitive biases, these are anything that hinder a person from evaluating a situation based solely on viable data. It's an error message in the brain. You have the echo chamber, bandwagon effect, self-serving bias, status quo bias, along with countless more. The logical fallacies, and that's any breakdown in the logical process in your thinking. And these can include the straw man argument, the appeal to emotion, appeal to authority, begging the question, loaded question, and many more after that. Non sequiturs. Why is that? Oh, that was the wrong key. Wake up, Brian. Creative thinking. These are ways to look and solve problems from different perspectives. I've mentioned several times that when you're engaged in decision making as a leader, you want to get as many possible perspectives as you can. That's why things like DEI are so important, because you want people that are qualified to be there, but who see things differently than you do. They give you a different perspective. Christina, you're from Spain, right? Okay. And Vios, you're from Germany. I'm from here in the US, and Basil is from Denmark? Belgium. I get those mixed up sometimes. I'm sorry. Okay, so we got 4 different national cultural perspectives. This is amazing. This is what I'm talking about. So when I present something, we need to solve this situation. We need to work on this problem. Everybody can pull back to where they're from, how they were raised, what they believe, what they think, what they know, what they've done. And you don't have to match me, but you're adding the perspectives to that. And so you help to be able to identify more of the variables and factors impacting that moment. Creativity stems from embracing chaos, from which new ideas can emerge. The old way of doing things must be left behind for a new approach. And if you've taken MGT 4950, you've gone through the book by Clark and the book by Oshry, and you've learned about this. This is looking for ways to be creative and innovative by not returning to the old ways of doing things. You want to avoid that, and that's called the status quo. We as humans hate uncertainty. So when we have a chaotic moment that happens, we want stability. So we cling to the last thing that really worked when we were in a similar situation, even if it was like 5 years ago. But we're not in 5 years ago. We're in today. There's a different set of parameters and factors involved. So that solution isn't going to be working like we want it to. But we keep repeating the old ways by clinging to that pseudo certainty. Now let's move to problem solving. We're kind of going through this in a rapid fire because you've already had this. So I'm just refreshing your minds. Problem solving, the process of finding solutions to difficult or complex issues. Using critical thinking and creative thinking. Don't know why it says creative e-thinking, but hey, maybe you use AI, I don't know, to find a unique solution to a problem. By now, at Vios, you've had me for a couple classes. You know, errors do get into my slides. Happens. Ethics, moral principles that govern behavior or the conduct of an activity. This whole class is about ethics. We learn ethics from family, friends, social groups, and even here at school. What you do when no one is watching you. What do you do when no one is watching you? That really shows your ethical, your personal ethos. If no one is watching you, do you pick up that $100 bill off the ground? Well, for me, this might be wrong, but if I'm out in the middle of a field and there's a $100 bill, it's open game. But if I'm next to someone's car and they're in the car, there's $100 bill out there, I have to assume they probably dropped it. So I would ask them. Now, if they're being ethical, they'd say, no, I didn't drop it, or yes, I did. In either way, they can get their money back, or I'll wind up with $100. But it really depends on the situation. But when people are not watching, what do you do? Would you like to have your thoughts and your activities that you do when no one is watching broadcast on national TV? That's called, what is that called? Is that the observer effect? I think it's the observer effect. Do you know? No? Okay. I think it's the observer effect. It's a way of testing one's ethical standing. If I'm doing things that or I'm thinking things even that I would not want broadcast across national TV, then maybe I shouldn't be doing or thinking those things. That's a good way to test your ethics. And ethics,
The front page test, right? That's what we always called it.
Which one?
If you didn't want to see it on the front page.
Yes, yeah, front page test. That's what it was. Ethics help us to do the right thing in the absence of supervision. That's important as a student, and that's important, very important when you're an employee. Because remember, we talked about the duty that employees owe their employers. Well, they got to trust that you're going to do the right thing, the ethical thing, when they're not standing there micromanaging you. These are important in college and important in the workplace. Now, communication, the imparting or exchange of information, news, or knowledge. Communication involves conveying information. Human beings, we convey through spoken word, written word, visual medium, but we also use nonverbal communicative cues. Most of what we are saying when we communicate is nonverbal. What I just did with my hands right there is nonverbal. How I posture myself. I'm like this. This is guarded. This is more warm and welcoming. This is like real relaxed. Maybe I'm listening to you. Maybe I'm falling asleep. We're communicating without using words. This also requires us to do something that's difficult for humans, and that's active listening. Active listening means that if Christina is talking to me about something that's important to her, doesn't have to be important to me, I have a choice. I can either listen to what she's saying, and I'm working through everything that she's saying, and I'm really trying to get to what the content is and what the meaning and the intention are, or I could be coming up with my rebuttal. This has happened to me many times in relationships. My partner is sitting there, we're in an argument, they're going on about something, and I've got the next 5 minutes prepared. I'm going to hammer into them. And I haven't heard what they said. And I used to get caught, but then I learned how to be able to repeat the last 1.5 sentences. That makes it look like I was listening when I really wasn't. That's just a cheat. I wasn't being ethical. But active listening would mean that I listen to what that person is saying, and I don't just let my feelings get involved. But what are they really intending? What are their feelings? And we're not going to go through how to communicate. You've already had that, but we need to be giving feedback so that our interlocutor, which is a fancy 5-cent word, meaning the other person in the conversation, can make sure you're receiving the message intended. So back to my conversation with Christina. She's talking. I'm actively listening. Now she's done. I give feedback and I say, what I'm understanding is, and she says, that's it. Or, no, not exactly. In that case, she's got to reformulate how to package it and send it again to get the message across. That's an effective way to communicate. She speaks, I listen. As I bite my tongue, I listen, and then I get feedback. She confirms I got it right, and we move on to the next point. Persuasion. This is the act of selling someone to do or believe something. This requires massive amounts of ethics and effective communication. If you are unethical, then you may manipulate the other person or others, if they're a group, unfairly. You see the persuasive techniques being used by people doing coercion, like I said earlier. When we look at cult leaders like Jim Jones, you may not be familiar with him, but he wound up getting close to 1,000 people all to commit suicide down in the northern coastal area of South America. This was back in the 70s. Okay. He was a cult leader. He was using and abusing people. When the authorities caught on to him, he had all the people kill themselves, and those that didn't drink the Kool-Aid It was actually a flavor aid. That was actually the brand that was used, and it was poisoned. That's where the saying comes from, to drink the Kool-Aid. He may not have known that, but that's where it comes from. He had people that were loyal to him go and kill them. That is using persuasive techniques for a bad purpose. That's coercion, manipulation, and ultimately murder. You need to rely on facts and proven records when you're involved in persuasion. That's going to help keep you staying ethical. I'm not going by what I think this product can do. I'm telling you what it's been verified to be able to do. And then I show supporting information. This is really why in class, in your assignments, I'm so big on citations and references. If you're going to use information from somewhere, please give me support. Show me where you got it. Claim that you got it from somebody. This all ties back to the Cleary mind. It ties back into you're persuading me as a student through your paper, but you're standing on facts. And you're pointing to those facts and saying, this author said this. That's the correct way to do it. Leadership. This is the ability to lead people and organizations to a lofty goal they would not have otherwise attempted. When I led a recon team in the Army for military intelligence, it was my duty as the team sergeant to lead my team. That meant that I wanted them to excel past what they could do. Therefore, I had to, because I wanted to be ethical, I made myself I held myself to a higher standard than most sergeants did. So when I came to you and said, are you working out extra or are you just doing the company PT? You already know that Sergeant G not only does the 4 company PT sessions a week, but he's at the gym another 4 times. I'm already living what I'm telling you to do. And I wouldn't expect them to go to the gym another 4 times, but maybe 2 or 3 more would be nice. Because ultimately, I want them to succeed, not just in their physical fitness tests, but out in the field when we're on missions. So as a leader, I wanted them to retain a higher goal than they would have otherwise. You see, leadership is a lifestyle. It is not a position. Management is a position. Leadership is a lifestyle. It's relational. It's all about relationships with each individual person on your team and the team itself as an entity. It requires every aspect that we're discussing about the Cleary mind, specifically ethics and communication. Unethical leadership leads right into coercion, cult leaders, all kinds of problems that we've seen. We can go back and find many instances. And it doesn't have to be something as drastic as the Jonestown event. It could be something minor where people start by persuading, but they're unethical as a leader. They wind up manipulating and coercing their people. And next thing you know, they're treating them poorly. They're not treating them fairly. Unethical leaders manipulate others for their own self-gain. The entrepreneurial mindset, the mindset of creativity, business generation, creative. Okay, let me get the word right. The mindset of creative business generation and economic return at any point in the economy. That's the definition that's given in the Cleary mind. This is the logical conclusion of the Cleary mind, furthering leadership and business, not just getting you so you can be a leader and you can be in business, but now what are you going to do with that? This takes you to that next step. The entrepreneurial mindset. We talked about that last week. We talked about how entrepreneurs have got to have a different approach to how they do things. But after a couple of years, the business has got to become more traditional because it's grown in size and also in its profits. Remember us talking about that? Well, what do you do at that point? You got to be able to switch from the entrepreneurial mind into more of a traditional leader mind. You're being told this now, so when you do launch out into your careers, you know that this is part of the process. Maybe if someone had taken time to tell Kalanick, maybe the problems at Uber that we discussed last week wouldn't have happened. I'm thinking. It directly feeds back into critical thinking. This is because we live in an ever-changing global business environment. Technology is always increasing and moving forward. and knowledge is ever growing. We as humans know more today than we did yesterday, which is substantially more than we knew 5 years ago. Now we go back 1,000, 2,000 years, we look like geniuses. Even the most illiterate, uneducated person would be a genius by standards of like 1,000 years ago to most people, with the exception of like Aristotle and Plato and people like that, obviously. But we've got so much information, but it is available to us, not necessarily all in our head. We can access the internet. We can do Google searches. We can use AI. We can do all these things now. But are we using it effectively? Are we using it to generate new creative ideas in the businesses we're in or starting new businesses? Are we leading ethically? Or are we doing this for our self-interest? Now, there's not a problem with wanting to start a business so that you can get financial gain. That's not a problem. But when that's all you focus on, and that is the ethics guiding how you govern and lead and run the organization, now it's all about self-interest. I have no problem with CEOs getting a good paycheck. I have problems with CEOs getting a really, really good paycheck and then treating people miserably. Self-assessments. Here we're briefly going to go over how to conduct a self-assessment. And these slides are also from my TCM 1000 course, but I think you're going to find them useful. Self-assessments. As a leader in the business world, self-assessments should be a regular part of your life. You have the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the MBTI, and I have a QR code for you towards the end of the slides that you can use to go right to a good version of that test. Now, when you take that test, if you do, it's not giving you solid facts. There's no way to create a personality test, an assessment that is 100% accurate. Critics say, well, it's not 100% accurate. Of course it isn't, because it's working with subjective data as opposed to objective data. So it depends, how am I feeling today? That governs how I answer. And so you could take it today, come up with one score, take it next week, come up with a different. Well, that's okay. At that point in time, if you're answering honestly, that's where you're actually at. And it's okay. Human beings, we shift between this mood and that mood, this attitude and that attitude. You can also journal. You can take out your computer, a piece of paper, whatever, and you just work through the important things in your mind. Whichever way you decide to self-assess, you got to always learn how to evaluate who you are at that moment, which means you have to know who you were in previous moments, which means you have to be honest with yourself. You discover the various quirks about yourself, and you strategically plan for how to become better leaders, better individuals, better partners in your relationships, better fathers and mothers, better friends. We can work on how to become better by doing the self-assessments. Self-assessments evaluate what you like, what you dislike, your temperament. Are you happy, sad? Are you depressed, angry, mad? Your hopes, ambitions, motivations. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the reason? And by now, you've heard me probably talk about expectancy theory and motivation. I think most people fall to that one kind of as a default. There are many other theories out there, and I think people do fall into those as well. But I think the default for humanity seems to really kind of be, what am I getting from this? We go to work, we work 40 hours a week because I'm expecting to get that paycheck. And they also help you to understand if you're extroverted or introverted, along with many other things. Get the right key. There is no such thing as a truly perfect personality assessment. However, they're a great starting point for very personal, careful, deliberate introspection and self-reflection. So what are you going to look for? You're going to look for, have you always been like this or that? You want to look for areas you've improved in, areas that you see that need improvement, and traits that cause harm to other people. This could be physical or even psychological harm. You want to turn and look into your past at the leaders you've had before. You want to find people in your past who exemplified positive behavior as a leader. Now, that may have been a manager at work. It could be a parent, a grandparent, a friend in your social group. They may not be a formal leader, but you may see them as a leader, but you want to see what were the good traits. And you want to find those that exemplified negative behavior as well, because you want to be able to find out what to avoid. You want to see, am I doing that negative behavior that made me feel so bad at that time period? Am I doing it to others now? How were they at fulfilling their responsibilities? Did they meet the needs of the people under their care? Did they take responsibility for their actions and their comments? Now, we're going to do a quick tangent into leadership styles, just a real quick one. You have the authoritarian, and they dictate or mandate. They tend to think more selfishly when they lead. So making decisions, they think about, what am I getting from this? Very similar to dictatorial leadership. And as you're going to see in a minute, very closely related to toxic leadership and even narcissistic leadership. You have the laissez-faire leadership style. This is where you leave others to decide. You refrain from making decisions. Now, normally that may sound like a bad thing, but when you're in charge of a group of engineers or creative individuals, you better take a hands-off approach and use the laissez-faire form of leadership, because these people, they need that freedom to think, to be creative, to innovate. If you're standing over them and they feel they're being micromanaged, they're going to self-censor. They're not going to give their input. They're not going to be as creative. But most fields, the laissez-faire approach typically leads to some form of disaster. But with engineering or creative fields, it is really what fuels them. So as a leader, if you want them to innovate and be successful, you step back. You're more of a supportive role in that case. I would turn more to servant leadership or humble leadership in that instance. You have transformational leadership, and this seeks to prepare others for promotion, prepares them for more responsibility. In the Army, as an E5 sergeant, I learned from the E6 sergeants what I needed to start learning how to do. But I was teaching the specialists and corporals who were E4s how to be a sergeant. So we could all just kind of progress along through the promotion as a group. It isn't me just getting my promotion, but I'm bringing people along with me, and somebody's in front of me bringing me along with them. That is transformational leadership. Transactional leadership, they exchange the work for reward. While this is also the basis for exchange theory motivation, here it can be a selfish behavior on part of the leader. Not always, because there are some times where transactional leadership is actually good. There are some good articles, some good studies showing transactional leadership has benefits. But there are many instances where it's been applied in a way that turned out to tie right back to self-gain. So just be careful. If you're applying transactional leadership, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and you're being ethical. You have diplomatic leadership. Here you seek a consensus. Sometimes that's the way that you need to be as a leader. Sometimes consensus will bring stagnation and will stall out a team. If you're working on a project and you're like, why after 3 months are we still trying to figure out what we're even doing here? Maybe it's time to move away from consensus. You wait until everybody's on the same page, then you move forward. And this style can take more time than the project often allows. So yes, it's good to make sure everybody's all together, but remember, you can blend leadership styles. Maybe you need the diplomatic approach, but you've also got to be very focused on the task. You blend some styles together and you get what you need, but always make sure you're being ethical in how you're treating your team. You have servant leadership. Here you encourage others. You support the team. You see yourself being there to serve the team in its efforts, and you tend to be humble. Servant leadership is closely related to humble leadership. There are differences, but they're very related. Now, this doesn't mean I'm going to be serving my team coffee every morning and donuts, but it does mean that when they have a need to be able to do the project they're working on, I'm finding ways to make sure that need is met. If they need additional resources, material, information, tools, etc., I'm out working to procure that for them. They don't have to worry about going and getting it. They let me know what they need. I'm going out and getting them. And in the process, I'm also concerned about their well-being. So if they're having problems in their house, with their family, if they're able to talk to me and willing to talk to me even a little bit, maybe there's some things I can do. Maybe I can shift their schedule around. I am trying to serve them, but this isn't like I'm their waiter. I wanted to make sure that's clear. You can blend styles. We already talked about that. Toxic leadership, just a quick slide on that. It's a unique blend of narcissism, abusive treatment of subordinates, self-promotion, unpredictability. And this is from Schmidt in 2008. And why did this slide look like this? I use the little button on there that organizes my slides. And this just, now that I'm reading it, it just doesn't look right. But hey, here it is. Anyway, you got the information. That's what matters. And you get to look at me and go, ah, he's goofy. Anyway, toxic leadership. There was a great study I read. It was a master's thesis on toxic leadership. And really, you have narcissism, the abusive treatment of subordinates, self-promotion, and unpredictability. Those are like the four pillars to what makes toxic leadership toxic. It is not good for the people that are on that team if that leader is a toxic leader. How do you know someone is a toxic leader? Are they abusive? Are they treating you poorly? Are they demeaning you? Do they create a work environment that really doesn't, it's not welcoming in any way, shape, or form? Is everything they do about them? Well, at that point in time, really, maybe it's time to find a new place to work at, because you're not really going to be able to change that person. And so don't spend your time and your energy, because that's valuable. Time is the one thing that you'll never be able to replenish. If I have $100 bill in my hand and I give it away, I can go and I can work and I can earn another $100. I can invest money, get my dividends, and I got another $100. Time, I got 10 minutes. If I give it to you and it's wasted, I'm never getting that 10 minutes back. So don't waste time trying to change something that you cannot change. And a toxic leader, you're not going to be able to change. Neither are you going to change a narcissistic leader. Now, there is a specific type of leadership called narcissistic leadership. It is related to toxic leadership, but they are independently different. Just wanted to point that out. So why are we talking about leadership? First, the defining aspects of leadership are really behavioral traits. Second, since you are in a degree program designed to prepare you for the business environment, it is wise to show you how leadership is directly connected to personality and behavioral traits. And since you're going to be going through and doing a self-assessment in your assignments this week, it's good to understand, who am I as a leader? I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about you. You sit down and you're contemplating yourself. Who are you as a leader? There's somebody that sees you as a leader, maybe on the sports team. Maybe you're not the team captain, but there's some people that are on the team, some teammates, and they see you as a leader. How do you know? Because they're coming to you and they're asking you for advice. If someone's coming and asking you for advice, they probably see you as some form of a leader in their world. So what defines you? Here we're getting into, if I'm journaling, this is what I want to be writing about. Am I selfish, empathetic, caring, greedy, communicative? Am I motivated? Describe yourself when you're going through this. Make some notes first when you're exploring who you are. Some basic questions you can use. When I see someone suffering, I ignore them, feel their pain, but do nothing. Talk to them, find a way to help them. How do you engage with people that are suffering? When I am in charge, I receive feedback from others. I think I know best. I seek assistance. You see, a truly good leader knows their limitations, and they find people that specialize in the areas they're weak in and bring them into their team. There's many areas I'm weak at. And so if I need to, I find people that specialize in those areas. When I am part of a team, I politely offer feedback, ridicule others on the team, make fun of the leader, refrain from offering any input. That's called self-censorship. When something does not go my way, I get angry, feel sad, feel humiliated, Take a moment to reassess the situation. Now, here's the funny part. You may feel many of these things at the same exact moment. Our human brain feels and processes emotion and logic at the same time. That was, I think Timothy Clark, 2020, in his book, he talked about that. We process this information simultaneously, so it can be confusing. We may get angry and feel humiliated at the same moment. That's okay. Just be honest about what you find inside yourself, even if it may sound confusing. So, metaphorically, above the doors of this very classroom here, we got the words that say, Nachthi Satuan. It's Greek. It means know thyself. It was said that above the doors to the temple of Delphi in the ancient Grecian temple, these words were written because people that were coming into that temple, coming into that mystery school, had to know who they really were. It's that important that the ancient Greek philosophers made it that prominent at the temple of Delphi. To truly become yourself, you must know yourself. And these self-assessments, whether formal with the MBTI or journaling or any other system that's out there, can help you accomplish it. It will not do it for you. You have to do the work, but it can help you sort through everything in your mind and find out who you really are, what you really feel. Now, we got why and what questions. Why? Why do I feel that way about a different group of people groups? Why do I feel my professor dislikes me? Well, the why? Now, let's look at what questions. What causes or leads me to feel like I do about different people groups? And what can I do differently? What either about myself or my professor leads me to feel rejected? And what can I do differently to help me feel like I am a part of the class instead of an outsider? You see, what questions require action? Why questions, you can be passive. You don't have to actively do anything. But with a what question, it's imperative that you follow through with what can I do? How can I change this? Well, that would be a how, but it's not a why. Why is just, why is that there? Not what is that doing there and what is its purpose and what should I be doing with it? Urich in 2018 noted that we often do not learn from what we go through. And this can lead to a false sense of confidence. We've gone through experiences, but we didn't necessarily learn the lesson. That's how come humans have to go through the same life lesson repeatedly before we actually learn it. Why is not the best question to ask oneself when seeking true self-knowledge. For this very reason, I have taken on an intense journey of self-discovery personally, and I recommend you to do the same. Start with this assignment this week. There are many non-linear factors to consider. Remember, reality is non-linear, but the human brain thinks linearly. The human brain is A, then B, then C. Reality is A, Q, 4, 3.145, 7, asterisk sign, all over the place. Reality is chaos. Our human brain doesn't like that. We want things in order. How do we get the two to mesh? Urich recommends asking what instead of why questions. The author pointed out two types of self-awareness. You have internal self-awareness. This is how we see our others. Our values, passions, aspirations fit with our environment, reactions, including our thoughts, feelings, behavior, strengths, and weaknesses, and impact on others. Now we have external self-awareness. And this is understanding how other people view us. You see, today I'm engaged in external self-awareness. Why? Because the dean is here to do my review. And so in my mind periodically is, how am I appearing? How am I sounding to this individual? That's external self-awareness. Internal self-awareness really is just all between my ears, contained in my dome. But once we get out of our own head, now we're dealing with external self-awareness. Here's that QR code I threatened you with. I mean, I promised you with. I'll be sending out a copy of these slides so you can use it there. You can do a shot of the screenshot here, QR code it, whatever. This will take you to the MBTI. It's beneficial in helping you with understanding who you are. If you want to do a Google search, you can just search for MBTI personality test. You don't have to do it. I'm just telling you it's a tool that's out there. But as with any self-assessment out there, it's not 100% accurate. Don't expect it to be. But do use it as a tool to help stimulate other questions about who you are, why you're the way you are, what you perceive, what you feel, what you think. Your journey. In assignment 12.1, you will be placing yourself into the interview seat for a position you may dream of obtaining. You will make a list of interview questions and your responses. Think about the time you spent here at Cleary University, including important courses, internships, and work experience. So here, follow the instructions, but I'm just giving you a preview. This is about your dream job, your dream job's interview. Now it is your turn to contemplate. I do have new glasses coming next week. It is your turn to contemplate how you are and how your time at Cleary University has impacted you as an individual. Make sure to take time to reminisce about your last 3 or 4 years here, depending if you're a junior or senior. I recommend sitting in a quiet place. I like the music group Enigma. It's a French group. I think they're French. Or is he Spanish? I think he's French. Anyway, long story is it's peaceful. I like to put myself into a peaceful situation and think about, who am I? What's really going on between my ears? What's happening in my life? What responsibilities do I have about what's happening in my life? Am I willing to accept those, or do I want them to change? If I want to change them, then I've got to be the one to do it. So either I accept it or I change it. And lastly, this is your story. This isn't someone else's. Don't even sit and think about that external situation we were talking about right there. Awareness, external awareness. This is self-awareness at this moment. If you do branch into thinking, well, I think people perceive me like this, that's fine. You're not going to lose any points or anything. But I really want you to dig through in your own mind who you really are. You need to write a paragraph for each of the 9 prompts. And I believe this is assignment 12.1 or 2. It's one of them. You only got 2 this week. You're going to write a paragraph for each of the 9 prompts provided in the instructions. These are to be from the heart, not from research. Don't include APA 7 citations and references unless you're providing relevant information from a source. That's the only time to use it. And you can actually do this assignment without any citations or references. And actually, I would prefer that because this is your story. However, you should be able to come. I already said that. Nice. This is your opportunity to reminisce about the last 3 or 4 years and to think about how it's impacted you, how it's changed you. Here's 12.2. That was 12.1. In 12.2, you're going to be developing your e-portfolio. So what is an e-portfolio? Will help. That's better. The instructions tell you to include, you're going to include 3 to 5 assignments from the past several years of your academic journey. Now, it's not like you're actually putting those assignments in there. I want you writing about those assignments. Okay. So you're going to like summarize them. You're going to include a brief explanation for you about your reason for including that assignment. Why did you include it? What about it are you proud of? Maybe you learned something. Maybe you learned about yourself. Maybe you learned something that you thought was really cool and fascinating. When selecting which assignments to include, think about the following. How have you developed as a thinker in progression through the last several years? How do you see things now as a senior or as a junior for some of you? How are they different than when you were a freshman? How do you see things differently? I guarantee you, you see things differently now. And this is, of course, the one slide everybody likes to see. This means we're done with the lecture. Are there any questions or anybody have any comments, either on Zoom or live in concert?
Nope, I'm all good.
Okay. In that case, if you do have any questions or anything that arises, please shoot me an email. I'll see you Wednesday. We'll be on Zoom for our Wednesday lecture. Y'all have a good day now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too.
Christina, let me make sure I get you logged into the book.
Yeah.
There we go. Gotcha.
Wait, you get that? Yeah, oh, you got lots of time. None of that yet. Yeah, yeah. So. Yes, no, so.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.